Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about one of the strangest phenomenons we see in the fitness world when it comes to nutrition. Are all of these people who, the only way they can come to this conclusion is a conspiracy theory, right? I'm going to get to that in a minute. But people who will insist that eating saturated fat is healthy, but are against polyunsaturated fats. Okay, and I want to be clear here that the only way you can take this position is if you believe in a massive international conspiracy to create bad research, and that all nutritional science researchers are basically part of an evil conspiracy. That's the only scenario in which this works. Ironically, you see people who are on the other extreme sometimes pull the same thing. You'll see vegan people who will claim that, all this research is funded by, meat and dairy industry, right? When it says that, meat and dairy aren't always as bad as people think they are, and they can be, a lot of them are actually perfectly healthy and can be eaten in large amounts, right? You kind of see that, don't you? But here's what the data suggests. Saturated fats, particularly in excess, that's what we come over to, is excess, are harmful. They hurt insulin sensitivity. They negatively impact your lipid profile. They massively elevate LDL. And the current research now at this point shows causation with elevated LDL and atherosclerosis. Okay? Causation, not correlation. We know that it seems to be the cause, the leading cause. Large amounts of saturated fat elevate LDL. Notice I didn't say in moderation. I never said saturated fat is bad. Okay. That's what the research shows. Now, the same people will scream and cry that polyunsaturated fats are inflammatory, but the data doesn't support it. So that's a position that doesn't match the scientific evidence. It doesn't match it. It's not there. We know the most anti-inflammatory fats are omega-3, then omega-6 behind that. And then, polyunsaturated fats can be monounsaturated fats can be mildly anti-inflammatory, or in some cases, benign. It's going to depend a little bit. It's a little bit of wiggle room there. But they can be beneficial for that. They can be slightly beneficial to insulin sensitivity. All right? This is what the data shows. Saturated fats contribute to insulin resistance just as much, if not more so, than refined sugars. Now, you eat a bunch of both together, you really have a problem, don't you? Right? That's really a recipe for disaster. Okay. This is what the scientific evidence suggests. We also know that saturated fat is stored more efficiently as body fat in humans than any other source of calories, by a small margin. That's what the clinical data shows. All right. That's, again, in the presence of a calorie surplus, not just automatic. So you notice we go back over to all these issues with the saturated fat. It's in excess. It's not in small amounts. In small amounts, it seems to be perfectly fine, perfectly reasonable in small amounts, right? No problem, no reason to be afraid of that. All right, so you'll take the people who then say, these others, they're evil, they're inflammatory. They'll say omega-6 is inflammatory. Well, that was a debunked hypothesis. That's a hypothesis that was debunked about a decade ago in the lab. And all the data kind of shows that, omega-6 as a general rule, even if they're refined, even if they're processed, seem to be more anti-inflammatory than they are inflammatory as a whole. All right. So if you take a position saying otherwise, you're saying that all these researchers in 27 different countries are all perpetuating a scam here. All right, that's what you're saying, because that's the only way it works. All right, now here's the problem where this gets more extreme. That's fine. People are betting their lives on this conspiracy theory. That's what they're betting their lives on, because the people in these camps, these schools of thought, and they have enormous followings, now say butter is a superfood, bacon's a superfood. We're going to add butter to everything. Okay? Just going to ignore all that data. Say it's all funded by the seed oil industry to kill us all. That's what they're going to say. So then they will take the one food, one of the foods that we know in excess causes all of these problems, and they're going to build their whole diet around it. Because they are so convinced that all these nutrition researchers around the world are lying. Not exaggerating, but lying. Because if they're only exaggerating, if they're just exaggerating it and maybe it's not as bad, this is still a really stupid idea. It's like, I'm going to just eat enormous amounts of it because it's not as bad as they thought it was. And that the moderation range is a little higher than they thought it was. So you're just going to take it to excess and make sure. You're like, fuck it, I'm going to make sure that I get type 2 diabetes. Or I've known people who buy into this. I know people who bought into this who are type 2 diabetics, right? They've gone this route. They put the butter on everything. They've lost weight. They're still type 2 diabetics years later. And they still follow this line of thought. But you have people who do other diets who get completely off the meds. They don't. This person doesn't. They don't think that maybe it's all the bacon and butter they're eating. Require them to still require medication for their type 2 diabetes. But they've tried everything. Okay? Except maybe not eating all the bacon and butter. But that's the thing. People will literally then gamble their health on this. They'll gamble their health on it and say all of these research and data is wrong. All this science is wrong. It's a conspiracy. And maybe that might be true in some cases. This case, where's your data to the other end? It's not there. So then they will just eat large. Instead of just saying, okay, well, I'll give myself some more wiggle room on the foods. No, they're just going to make them the staple of their diet. The sheer ignorance of this, I do not have words for. I don't have words for this level of ignorance or the line of logic here. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.